Now it's time for Fabulous Film and Friends. As we blast off into our fourth season here at Fabulous Film and Friends, and with the recent release of Alien Romulus, we thought it only fitting to take a look at all the freaking Alien movies minus the execrable Alien vs. Predator films. And starting with 1979's Alien, directed by Ridley Scott and starring Tom Skerritt, Sigourney Weaver, Harry Dean Stanton, Yaphett Koto, John Hurt, Veronica Cartright, and Ian Holm. Followed by 1986's Aliens, directed by James Cameron and starring Sigourney Weaver again, joined by Michael Biehn, Bill Paxton, Lance Henrikson, Carrie Ann Henn, William Hope, Jeanette Goldstein, Mark Rolston, Al Matthews, and Paul Reiser. Then we get a little bit of a break. We get 1992's Alien 3, directed by David Fincer, starring Weaver once again, with Charles S. Dutton, Charles Dance, Ralph Brown, Pete Postelwaite, Brian Glover, Holt MccAllany, Lance Henrikson, and a veritable slew of bald British day players yelling, "You bloody wanker!" Then there's 1997's Alien Resurrection, directed by Jean-Pierre Jeunet, starring Ms. Weaver, Winona Ryder, Ron Perlman, Dan Hedaya, Brad Dourif, J.E. Freeman, Kim Flowers, Gary Dourdan, Dominique Pignon, and Michael Wincott. Then we get an even longer break in the actual franchise with the aforementioned cash grabs Alien vs. Predator thrown in the mix, and the series starts up again in earnest with 2012's Ridley Scott directed prequel Prometheus, starring Noomi Rapace, Michael Fassbender, Charlize Theron, Idris Elba, Logan Marshall Green, Sean Harris, Rafe Spall, and Guy Pearce. And in 2017, we're treated to Alien Covenant, once again directed by Ridley Scott, starring Michael Fassbender, Catherine Waterston, Billy Crudup, Danny McBride, Callie Hernandez, Carmen Ejogo, Guy Pearce, and everybody's favorite prankster Jussie Smollett, and blink and you'll miss them cameos by Noomi Rapace and James Franco. Which leads us to 2024's Alien Romulus, directed by Fede Alvarez and starring Kaylee Spaney, David Johnson, not our David Johnson, mind you, Isabella Merced, Archie Renault, Eileen Wu, Spike Fern, and a posthumous performance by Ian Holm. I'm your host, Gino Caputi, and the guests today are Burton Brown, David Johnson, DMD, and comic book loving hypnotherapist Joe Field. All right, gentlemen, no jokes, no stories. With 7 movies to cover, we're going to get right into it with the one synopsis. Alien movies started off about a crew of space miners serving on an enormous mining vessel called the Nostromo, who, while in cryosleep on their return to Earth with their minerals and ore in tow, are given orders to stop on the planet LV-426 to investigate a distress signal coming from a derelict spacecraft. While investigating the ship, the crew inadvertently bring an alien on board their vessel. The alien picks off the crew one by one, and it is only Warrant Officer Ripley who survives by destroying the Nostromo and ultimately shooting the alien out into space. An internet meme sums it up thusly: Alien 1, team of miners faces an alien. Aliens, a team of Marines faces a lot of aliens. Alien 3, a group of convicts faces one alien again. Alien Resurrection, a group of pirates face 3 aliens, including a human hybrid. Prometheus, a group of scientists inadvertently create the alien. Alien Covenant, a group of colonists face the aliens. And Alien Romulus, a group of Gen Z babies face the original alien. So, that's it. Those are the synopses. We have 7 movies to discuss, and not an eternity to discuss them. So let's start with you, David Johnson. This was your idea to do the Alien movies. Rank them.
So the best Alien, the original Alien, that's my favorite. Second best, Aliens. This may be a wrench for you. My third favorite is Prometheus. And then I like Alien 3. Then it's a toss-up between Romulus and Alien Covenant. How many is that? That's 6.
Yeah, you're
right?
done. You're almost done.
Yeah.
Okay, no toss-ups. No toss-ups. You know my rule on no toss-ups. Pick one.
Okay.
Which is better.
Okay, I'm going to go with Romulus.
Yeah.
And then my least favorite is Resurrection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Burton Brown, what do you got to say?
Almost the same. The first Alien, number 1. I'm going to say Aliens 3 is number 2. The second Aliens is number 3. The first 3 are kind of interchangeable, but if I had to pick it.
Whoa, Bert, right there's some controversy to dig into. Okay.
Well, they're close. And then let's see. Fourth one, I really liked Romulus. I mean, it had its quirks, but I like Romulus, so I'll say that's number 4. And then Covenant was good, 5. I didn't like Prometheus and I didn't like Resurrection, so they could be interchangeable. 6 and 7.
There's no interchangeable. That's the rule on this podcast. Pick one. What's the worst? What's the worst one?
To me, Prometheus.
Wow. Versus Resurrection?
Well, there was action in there at least. There was aliens that died.
Okay, well, all right. I'm just foaming at the mouth, I'm ready to explode. But anyway, Joe, you're up.
Hey, it's only one off.
Okay. At the top, I have Aliens, followed by Alien. I also liked Romulus pretty well enough. Then Alien 3, Alien Resurrection, and then Prometheus and last I put Covenant.
Well, okay. So I can agree with a lot of that. I got Aliens, number 1. Alien, number 2. Alien 3, number 3. Romulus, number 4. Then Prometheus, then Covenant, and followed, like, almost on the level of Aliens versus Predator is Alien Resurrection. I hate that movie. Alien Resurrection, on this viewing, has graduated to one of the worst all-time movies ever made. I hate that movie. Hate it. It's such a piece of crap. Let's get into what do you got? Why is, Dave, you say Alien is the best? Why is it the best?
You know, I hadn't watched it in a while, and I watched it. I love the look of everything. It feels very 70s sci-fi. All the controls on the ship. It's not sleek. There's no. I mean, I'm assuming there's not much CGI in it because there wasn't much available at the time. I mean, Star Wars had some.
Guys, this cracks me up. Dave, I don't mean to belittle you, but CGI did not even come into play until Star Trek 2.
Well, I guess I should say.
So in the 70s, there was no such thing. There just was. The only thing they had was computer-controlled cameras for Star Wars. That Star Wars was the first breakthrough. So the Star Trek 2's Genesis sequence was the first CGI we ever saw.
Okay. Well, I loved the feel of the movie. It was for a long time, Aliens was my favorite, and then I watched them both again, and I'm like, man, Alien is just. It was a new idea at the time. It was just awesome, and it just built towards the to the end. And yeah. So
it's by far the best filmmaking. It's better filmmaking than Aliens, but I think Aliens, James Cameron cracked the story a little better. I will admit, I've been taking Alien for granted all these years because I've always like, oh, aliens, man, aliens. But Alien 1, I'm like, yeah, I forget.
All those arguments.
I forget how good Alien is. Like, it's right up there. It's kind of up there with Blade Runner. Like, when I do my what the hell happened to Ridley Scott diatribe later in the podcast, let's not forget he did make 2 of the finest sci-fi movies ever. So, all right, Bert, explain your reasoning for Alien being the best.
Well, I think it's because it's the origin, or it's the first one, so it's the first time you get to see their version of the alien. And for not being computer generated, the practical effects were pretty good.
Yeah.
Lots of blood and guts and stuff, but even
really.
Just the alien itself and the ship, or the well, is that the one? Maybe they all have it, but the little where part of a ship becomes alien covered or whatever. It's some element of. It's like a growth from the hive or something. Grows down in a hallway or something, and then
what's interesting about Alien, fresh in my brain, is I always forget how he is really like a chameleon with all these pipes and everything. He's always fitting in with the surrounding of the ship, which is cool. It's a really cool
Well,
idea.
and it's just it was a fresh story. There was I don't know if you could say there was any, what do you call it? They just toss it in because it's popular, elements like the Newt in Aliens. It's like, well, I guess there's kids out there, but there was nothing thrown in just because, oh, we got to throw this in. It was just a story, and it was the first time telling it, and it was done well. That's what I think.
Before I get to you, Joe, you can answer this too. But let's get into why is it? What do you mean done well? Because I've been looking at it. There's a lot going on psychologically with Alien. There's a reason why we keep going back, and why do you think that is, Bert? Versus just, oh, it's a good movie. That was a good show. Why?
Yeah,
let's get into it. What's good about it?
Well, the action is good.
No, I disagree. There's not a lot of action in Alien. It's mood. It's all mood. It's all mood. It's almost like an Orson Welles film. If you know what I do, you know what I mean by Orson Welles? Citizen Kane. Orson Welles was one of the first directors at that point that let people like talk over each other and like dialogue coming from outside the room, and he was doing things that hadn't been done. That's why Citizen Kane was considered a classic, because it was breaking all this new ground on how story. Because before it was like, hey, somebody here's a murderer. All these films from the 30s. So here's Orson Welles bringing in this sort of realism. There's this hyper realism to Alien, which makes it go, this is really cool. I always take it. Like I said, I take it for granted, but it's not blown. It's like Aliens. We think of Aliens as action movies. But Alien isn't an action movie. It's a suspense horror movie, in space.
Well, but there's action involved where the
not a ton.
Beast,
it's suspense.
Rips out of the guy's chest and everybody freaks out.
But that's not
like,
that's not.
Oh,
action.
we've never seen that before.
But that's horror. That's
Gore,
horror.
I guess I was calling that action.
Yeah, but Aliens is the action movie for sure.
Yeah.
But getting psychologically, there's all. As we get older, it's like, okay, there's a lot going on here. We're talking. Fear of disease, fear of rape, Joe, you're a psychologist. Let's get into all the ways that the first Alien just broke, thinking about the 70s and what passed for horror movies. And, we had The Shining. We have movies that were legitimately scary, for sure. Actually, most movies in the 70s were Halloween and Friday the 13th. All the great movies stem from the 70s, but Alien had never been seen. I remember when Alien came out, I saw the preview when Superman the movie came out. And at 9 years old, it just looked petrifying. I didn't see it till it was on TV, of course, because I was 9 years old. But when you see it, it's like I saw it on TV, and it still blew me away, just how freaking creepy it is. You want to, Dave, Joe, who wants to go first and weighing on how like all these levels of fear that it taps into?
I can go.
Sure.
For me, like I said before, the mood of that movie is straight up, it is horror, and it's terrifying. Even the pan shots through the ship, of like the industrial looking panels and everything, the shot angles, and I'm not a film person, but it's just out of all of them.
But you're onto something. He is really lingering on the idea of this lack of humanity and this cold loneliness of and there's constantly bitching about union dues. The Yaphett Koto and Dean Stanton are constantly bitching about the company screwing them over, which I think is really cool. There's just this realism to this film that I always take, like I said, because Aliens is such a roller coaster, I take for granted how subtly great Alien is. Joe, you're nodding. Get in there. Start swinging.
Okay, sure. So, we'll continue this, and then I'll talk about which one I liked more.
Yeah, right. Sorry, you're right. Oh, so go ahead. Talk about your why Alien is. Well, no, we're on a juicy topic, so let's.
We're on a juicy topic. Yeah. We'll stick with it. Yeah. So, I think that part of what makes Alien so... I think the realism is part of that. I think also grounding sci-fi in that kind of realism... Like, one of the things that strikes me is, like, the people who were on this expedition, like, it's hard not to compare Alien with something like Star Wars, right?
Yeah.
But Star Wars is this big, sort of almost high fantasy in space kind of adventure, right? Everything is most things are pretty clean for the most part. You know, you're talking about royalty and all these different you're talking about sort of this legendary struggle. And then you come to Alien, and it's a bunch of intergalactic truckers.
Right.
Who are basically, I mean, that's what they are. It's like they're blue collar workers in space.
Right.
You know, and what is it? They're taking their hauler, you know, bringing mining stuff, I think. It was sort of the idea.
Minerals and ores, yeah.
Yeah. And it's like they're totally in over their heads. And I think that what's also really, I mean, I think that element makes it really interesting is like you think of all these space stories that you have and you're thinking of like either military of some kind or
Explorers.
You're thinking royalty or explorers or scientists or something. I think having these really regular people kind of makes the sci-fi genre seem much more real.
Yeah.
I think it lends to the realism of everything. And then also just looking at the Nostromo and the way that it's designed, like, I think that the set is absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
Like, the way that it's all built, it looks like it was built really well, but also kind of dirty and, like, yeah, they've cleaned it a few times, but there's just some scuffs you can't get out here and there. And I think that element is done really well. And I think also the long, kind of slow shots at the beginning goes a huge way to setting the overall tone of how dark and lonely space really is.
Right.
And even within the confines of the Nostromo is like, oh yeah, this isn't like a super amazing, happening, fun place to be. It's like dark, lonely, cold, quiet corridors, you know, fill this entire structure. And I think that just starting with that idea, and there's a real kind of great theme, I think, of sort of almost cosmic horror that goes into it, of like, not only does the alien not care that they have feelings, lives, thoughts, stuff like that, it's killing them, the company doesn't either.
Right.
And space doesn't care. They are on their own little island, and they have to defend it for themselves, or else no one will, you know, give a crap otherwise.
Plus, usually it's a guy with a knife, but in this case, it's something that wants to impregnate you. Mm-hmm. So psychologically, it's scary for women and men, because, you know, when John Hurt gets in, the way it's dealt with it's still brilliant. Like it's still the most brilliant horror, one of the most brilliant horror scenes of all time, of him. You know, oh yeah, I'm better, I'm fine. You know, it's just, it's probably the most disturbing death scene, one of them, in any movie ever. You know, and I like I said, took it for granted. I loved the movie when I first saw it on TV, even though I remember before you get into Aliens, I just want to say I was a little disappointed with Aliens when it came out. I saw it with you, Dave. A bunch of us went and saw it at the Center Twin. I remember being a little disappointed because I was hugely into Star Trek, and the visual effects were just grimy and gritty like the Terminators were. And I was like, James Cameron makes cheap-looking movies, because the spaceship shots in Aliens aren't great. But then I saw it again and realized, well, who cares about the spaceship shots? The rest of the movie's really, really well made, and so I remember like being a little disappointed because it didn't look like Alien, and Alien still to this day holds up really well. Like, this is a great-looking movie. And anyway, so let me give you the floor to talk about why you like Aliens the best.
Yeah, I think for me, I really loved Aliens, partly for genre reasons. I think Aliens and Alien aren't of the exact same genre.
Yeah, they're not.
Aliens is much more horror based, and while there are horror elements in Aliens, I think it's much more of like a military, like, action flick.
Yeah.
A space action flick. And for me, I'm like, I enjoy that more. I don't really seek out a lot of horror movies. And so I kind of like that element. I think also the only reason why Aliens works as well as it does is that it takes sort of this pre-existing premise from Alien and says, well, like, okay, well, we're not going to be fighting it in space now, so you can actually shoot it and kill it, and the acid blood can go wherever it needs to go. Doesn't make a big difference. What is it going to be like for a bunch of military guys to get in there and try to be fighting these things? And the answer is, like, they mess them up quite a bit. You know, it's like you see tons of different xenomorphs getting, killed by these guys. Now,
did any of
they
you,
also take
let
a
me
lot of
break in,
losses,
did
too,
any of
but-
you watch the director's cut besides me?
I watched the director's cut a few years ago, I think.
Okay. Because there's
And that's where they
there's
really
a scene
do it.
there's a scene where they have these sentry. I just watched all director's cuts, so there's a scene where there's 4 sentry cannons that just shoot about 500 rounds each and just kill a ton of aliens. And there's still so many more, you know. So, but yeah, no, I agree. I think Aliens. The reason why it's so successful to me is, I think I have a prejudice against Veronica Cartwright. She's kind of a whiner and she doesn't add much. So I remember at one point maybe I just decided she irritated me. You know, when I popped it in one time. So Veronica Cartwright is in Alien. She's the navigation or the communications officer. And she's kind of a whiner. She doesn't add much other than she cries a lot. So I remember thinking she's not a great character. She's okay. I think I came to terms with that. I just think the dynamic of Paul Reiser, Michael Biehn, Bill Paxton, and Lance Henriksen is stronger than the dynamic of John Hurt, Ian Holm, Tom Skerritt, and Yaphett Koto, and Harry, they're all very good. Everybody's in the first 2 movies is really, really good. Actually, Alien 3, we'll get into it. Alien 3, it's getting to be like Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome for me. It's not as good, but it's better than I remember. And I'm kind of getting, like, I always sort of liked it, but I thought the second half was just tedious. And I was always, like anybody, mad that they killed Newt and Hicks. I just thought that was a terrible idea. But now I've come to accept it because the other movies are so much worse. And at least the first trilogy is legitimate. They are 3 different visionary directors who all 3 make very interesting, good-looking films. You know, Bert, you agree with that?
Yeah.
You like Alien 3 better. Why do you like Alien 3 better than Aliens? Yeah.
Well, they're pretty close to each other. I thought, that big truck they drive around, we were calling it the Cybertruck, but it's the big truck, the transport truck they were running around. They had squealing tires sound, like you would hear it on the street. And I'm like, squealing tires? It's like they're spinning out or something. And I don't know. It was just a weird sound effect.
That is what made the difference for you?
No, but it was, some of this
versus my issue with the film really is there's the criminals aside from Charles Dutton and Charles Dance, they're all indistinguishable from each other. Like, who's dying now? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I was like, you just pick one and there they go.
Yeah, and they all like, hey, you bloody wanker! It's like, oh my god, that it does get even still. While I like a lot of what David Fincher does with the cutaways and the opening credits are awesome. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but those British guys, that was a mistake.
Yeah, maybe that. But I like the idea of this weird little prison planet, and then the prisoners have to survive too.
Are you aware? Is anybody in my panel aware of the origins of Alien 3? Are you aware that it was originally supposed to be a monastery in space?
Well, they worked that in a little bit.
Yeah. So no, they rewrote it right at the last second. They had this director named Vincent Ward, and he had this visionary concept of this monastery made out of wood floating in space, which I guess at the last minute 20th Century Fox said, what the hell are we doing? A wooden space station? Or a wooden monastery? And they pulled the plug. And then Vincent Ward said, bloody hell, with all his British actors. He said, so they rewrote it. So it'd be a prison planet. But some of those prison sets were already built for this monastery space station. And to me, it's like, okay, but could you have just given the guy $5,000 and a couple of escorts and just said it's not made of wood? Because the idea of her going to Sigourney Weaver Ripley landing on a monastery space station is pretty cool. Like that would have been, because apparently she, like, somehow the space station created it. It's all very in depth in the behind the scenes.
Yeah, but then you'd have to have all those monks or priests or whatever they are cursing and shooting guns and
No, they
killing
didn't have.
people.
That was the thing. They had no weapons, so that's where those lines. So they rewrote it. So, but they're in the idea of the thing. So it was sort of like her last rites, and so basically it was her facing death, and so she's surrounded by people of God, which I think they really should have stuck with that concept. All you had to do is say, hey, let's cross out every reference in the screenplay that says it's a wooden space station.
Yeah.
No! I said it's wood, damn it!
It wouldn't be a monastery without the wood.
Would it have killed you just to have a steel infrastructure, and there'd be a lot of wood, but somehow it had its own atmosphere, and she lands in a cornfield on top of a space station, and you see the storyboards, and it seems that would have been pretty cool. I don't know why they didn't just say, yeah, it's not made of wood. Anyway, so I just wanted that in there because they rewrote it, and I will say, and Dave, I want you to, because I'm talking about. Do you think it works? Because I'm going to throw it out there. I don't think it works with them being finding God. I don't think it has anything to do with Ripley's story arc. The convicts, as they rewrote, you can tell they rewrote it because it's like, what is this whole found religion? It has nothing to do with the outcome of this movie.
Yeah, but again, I think it works better than Alien Resurrection.
Oh,
and
sure.
anything about that movie.
Let's not. Yeah.
But for me, I kind of like the idea that you have these hardened criminals that found God and decided to take a different path. I thought that was interesting for me in that movie. It wasn't really tied to Ripley and her storyline, but I thought it was a kind of a cool nod to these criminals changed their lives and made pacts with themselves, and for me it didn't bother me too much.
Well, it bothers me that they didn't make it matter. It doesn't matter. Charles Dutton's sacrifice doesn't have any meaning. It's not like he does it for God, or it all just feels like, he's such a good character. He's actually a good character. I actually like him a lot. Yeah. In the film, and I think not that he has to do something grandiose, but his death should feel a little less arbitrary, Yeah,
I mean, it was for the greater good, because in the end,
Right, but I kind of like the idea of him going, all right, sister, I'm going to do it clean. No mercy, or no speeches. Yeah. So you're kind of waiting for this moment that doesn't happen. And it's like, yeah, he should have been the one to kill her. Since I like that face-off between, I'm a murderer and rapist of women. She's like, oh, well, I must make you pretty nervous. Good line. Yeah, and it just seems like he was destined to be a better character, and that is a problem with the film. Joe, you're nodding. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think Alien 3 has so many different moments and so many different elements that, for me, it's a very mixed bag.
Yeah.
I really dislike that in many ways it felt kind of lazy that they just sort of erased so many important elements from Aliens.
Yeah.
Like just saying, oh yeah, everybody else in the pod crashed or died.
Right.
That's it.
It would have been better if she had to protect Newt on this planet of rapists and convicts.
Yeah.
Plus aliens.
I mean, like, so many different things like that. And I think, and it was not a deal with the actors. It sounds like it was, the whole background production stuff sounds like it was just a total mess from beginning to finish.
Yeah.
But
are you aware of this? They originally had William Gibson, who's a cyberpunk writer, and wrote Cyberpunk, and he wrote a Ripley or a Newt and Hicks Invasion of Earth script that got rejected. And you think, wow, What kind of dummies would reject that idea? But they did. I don't know why. Anyway.
It doesn't make sense. And I think that, honestly, like, hearing that they were going to do a monastery situation would have been so much better, because as it was, they didn't... The whole plot line of, okay, yeah, you're on this kind of ascetic prison colony, you know, with all these guys who are, I guess, trying to turn over a new leaf, but not really.
Right.
Like, because... I mean, the moment that she's off by herself, it's like all of a sudden, okay, well, all bets are off now.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, because that's how people are, you know. So obviously, in that setting, that seems fine as a concept. It just doesn't. If Charles Dutton's the one he's the most dangerous, but he's also the strongest. He's the most tempted, but he's also the strongest. And I like that concept. I like that idea. I just think that to kill Newt seems like it does undermine the struggle of Alien, and that's why everybody hated the film.
Yeah, killing them off, and honestly, that was one of the hardest things, because I'd seen Alien and Aliens, and when I looked at a plot synopsis that, like, oh, all the characters from Aliens, they just died except for Ripley.
Yeah.
I was like, I have no desire to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't until this podcast that I was like, okay, I'll watch all of them, and I found some things that I liked about the movie, but a lot of things that I also didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, do the characters or whatever, do they age in cryo sleep?
No.
Because if this is like, you know, if this is in reality, 6 years later,
No,
that they're making the movie, how are they going to make her look like she did 6 years ago?
They would have to they would have had to
recast her.
I think they would just have recast her. Yeah, she at that point she's.
But everybody liked that little girl, whatever her name was.
Yeah, but you would have no choice but to recast her. But see, originally she was going to be a woman in the William Gibson script, so it would have been years later, and she and Hicks, and apparently they're going to do a two-parter where Ripley comes back in part 4. It sounds really good. Like they're saying it was too similar to Aliens. It's like, well, at that point they're all similar. So I would have loved to have seen it on Earth with a giant war on Earth. I mean that's what they've always, the Alien 3 trailers. I don't know if you remember this, Bert or Dave. They had the logo appear over Earth, so everybody thought it was going to be on Earth, and then it just wasn't. So, because the early concept, so the marketing, actually, the early marketing for Alien 3 showed the Alien logo, Alien 3, over the planet, and we were like, wow, it's going to be Earth, wow! And then, nope.
See, and for me, the character Newt was like short round. I could only handle her in one. Yeah, she could have been out of the movie, and it would have been just as intense for me in Aliens.
Really? No, no way.
I mean, that was just to me.
That's like, a controversial take. She's the heart of that movie. She gives Ripley her life back.
Well, I mean, yes, but she wasn't my favorite character. I mean, because for me, it's like, it was Aliens is an action movie for me.
Yeah.
And so I'm more about Michael Biehn, ease down, yelling at Ripley. And then she has to save this little girl, Newt, with aliens coming after her. I don't know. For me, it was...
Well, again, I gotta cite the director's cut, because in the director's cut we find out that Ripley had a daughter who died at 66 years old. So while she was out in cryosleep, her daughter aged and got married and died. So she's grieving over that aspect too. So that's why she's so nurturing to Newt. Now, again, I think you didn't need it. It's a sort of her matron. Again, story arc, that's why I like Aliens the best, because Ripley does really grow as this character who both becomes the leader, the mother. It really is this feminist film, and it's too bad Roseanne was so angry about it, because this is one of the few legitimately great feminist movies, literally about motherhood. The alien queen's protecting her eggs, and Ripley's protecting her new offspring, basically, or her new, basically essentially her adopted daughter. And it's just a stronger story than again, the filmmaking is better in Alien for sure. But I think James Cameron did tap into a great script. It's just a really strong thematic script, and it's strong with the characters. They're all, again, I don't think Newt is supposed to be any more than what she is, which is a little girl who screams and survives. And she's not, I don't think she's cute or cloying. The only time she's ever cloying, and I like that, when she says, "Are you okay?" and she gives her the thumbs up. It's a funny little moment. I don't think there's none of the, "You would call him Dr. Jones." There's none of that, like, cheesy stuff. You know.
Well, I think anytime you add a kid to danger, you know, whatever that is,
Yeah.
kidnapping or like this, it changes well, for most of us, at least that are parents, and even those that aren't parents, you know, they just have a different feel, because it's like, oh, just, you know, it's not to say that watching adults die is a good thing, but when you think, you know, a child is in danger, or a child is threatened, or a child is hurt, it's like, oh, that's just so much worse.
Yeah.
And there's that element. And so,
but there's also something interesting about her survival instincts, which I think is a cool idea. And I love, "Why'd you put her in charge?" I love that that whole thing. You know, I think it is just a strong script. And I think that's why everybody loves it still, and why we're still trying to capture that alien's magic. And
well, a lot of these are now what's called cultural literacy.
yeah.
You know, there's lines that can be quoted from it. There's elements.
Absolutely.
There's the chest burster. There's
Game over.
You know,
That
game over, man.
Yeah.
Game over.
Yeah.
You know, all that stuff is, you know, if you haven't seen these movies, you don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
You know, unless someone tells you.
No, for sure. It's one of the films that shaped us all, at least from the 80s. And I think, you know, obviously the residual effect is the younger generations picked up on it, just because. And it is one of those movies.
It's a good movie.
It's one of those movies that solidly still performs. Would you agree, Joe? You must have seen it when you were, let's see, it was a good 20 years later when you must have seen it, right? What was your impression when you first saw it?
I actually came to the movies fairly late. I only saw Alien and Aliens, I think, like, maybe 4 years ago.
Okay.
3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was incredible seeing, like, first of all, the year that Alien was made, and then also just, like, how the character designs are, and I think that the horror of, like, the chest burster when the first time that happens, is just like, this is, like, really horror of a kind of different stripe. Like, this is not just your typical slasher movie, you know.
Right. Well, it's tied deeply into sickness and cancer and heart attacks, and, you know, it's all there. It's all there. A pathogen. It starts just as like some sort of, like, transmittable through this little creature, and then it just becomes the worst sort of fear we have, like tumors, and again, also it's trying to rape her. I mean, she's in her underwear, and so you have all these fears. That's the genius of the film. It's like I dismiss Ridley Scott, especially for Alien Covenant and Prometheus, because he's just not the same director. And you look at those movies and you look at this, like, yeah, but he tapped into, I guess he tries in Prometheus with the abortion scene, that sort of weird, like, what's going on? I mean, even Dante, my son's watching it, and he's like, "Oh, this is just so unbelievable." She staples her stomach, and then she's just running. I guess it's time to get into Prometheus. Well, I don't know. Next question. Before we get into Prometheus and Covenant and Resurrection, Burton Brown, what is the worst? You said the worst. Why is Alien? What'd you say was the worst? I already forgot.
I thought Prometheus was.
Okay, why is Prometheus the worst? It's plenty bad, but I think there's new lows with the other films.
For an Alien movie, there weren't very many aliens in it.
Well, no, but it's a more highfalutin prequel. It's not even called Alien. It's a prequel.
Well, still, you know, when we've already seen 1, 2, and 3, and in even Resurrection. You know, when someone says it's an alien movie, well, we need to see him kill like 1 billion aliens. I don't know, maybe not one, at least one. And it was just a weird. I didn't like the idea of these creator beings that, you know, that they were initially calling gods and chasing after them, and then finding them, and then they were just kind of giant people that had lived off somewhere else. I don't know. It was just an odd. And then Charlize Theron, she didn't come quite, it didn't come across quite as like some of the other, what is it, the antagonists or the company
It's a bad script.
representatives. And I just didn't, it was worth watching, but, just to kind of get what they're saying, but it just wasn't as interesting to me.
I think
don't know how
I think
else
it's
to
I
say,
think
but-
the Alien, the 1-2 punch of Prometheus and Alien Covenant are just the worst. Only because Alien Resurrection is such a wrong-headed piece of crap. Like, all of it just seems cartoonish and over the top.
Oh, and I was watching, this time when I was watching Resurrection, I was at the beginning, I was like, "Ugh, am I watching The Fifth Element?"
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
what
Another
it
French
reminded
director.
me of.
Yeah,
it
that's
reminded me of that
exactly,
totally.
exactly. And I hate The Fifth Element too because it's so stupid and French.
Oh, I like that one.
I hate it. It's French movies. Like, yeah, they're terrible at it. Stay away from sci-fi, French people. All right, Dave, thoughts? Getting impatient? Am I yakking too much?
No.
do you-
I Prometheus is my third favorite, and I'll tell you why. I love the idea. I just don't think it was delivered as well as it could have been. But I love the idea of the engineers. I mean, it goes
Yeah.
against any Christian, goes against Christian theology and everything. But the idea of, hey, we're going to go out, we found who created us in this star system. We're going to go find them.
Yeah,
Okay?
that's all
And-
fine. But
and
don't
I-
you think
and
it's a
I-
letdown when you meet him?
Yeah, it's a letdown, but when they created man, I mean, if you remember the beginning scene, one of them drinks that black ooze and he
Yeah.
disintegrates, and
Right.
his DNA allows for life to happen. It wasn't to create humans; it was for them to find another planet. That's
Uh-huh.
how I took it. So
Okay.
those engineers are just selfish, right? So they
Yeah.
don't care about humans, and so when they came into him, and then he rips off, what is it, Michael? Who's the droid? What's his name?
It's David Fassbender.
David. Yeah, rips off his head and kills the old man because he's not interested. He found out that planet that they seeded has life, and so he's trying to escape and then take the people there. David as a.
But don't you think? I think both. Wouldn't you agree that both Prometheus and Covenant wuss out on these concepts?
Yeah, Alien Covenant is my second to the bottom.
Yeah.
I didn't really like it. I liked Prometheus better. It had potential. It just didn't deliver, like you said. But
No.
I
think the idea is fine.
Yeah.
I think the idea is fine, but what I think about both those films is Ridley Scott wanting to have his cake and eat it. He wants to make a 2001 sort of origins of mankind sort of space adventure, and then he wants to mix it with an alien movie, and then so in order to do that, he makes the engineers just jerks. Like, well, okay, so that's kind of a letdown, and everybody's so stupid in it. like Logan Marshall Green, he's the guy who plays Noomi Rapace's husband. It's like, okay, he's just pissed off. They just met this, like, they've just encountered one of the most mind-boggling experiences of humankind, and he's just mad because they didn't find exactly the answers they want. Like, that doesn't seem realistic. And then he's just being so jerky to David, so that creates David's desire for revenge. It's all just so simple-minded. Like, what?
Yeah.
Everybody's just dumb in this movie.
It's kind of
including the droid.
It's kind of similar to Star Trek V when they go and find God.
Yeah, it is.
And God's a jerk. God's a jerk.
It is.
Yeah.
But at least Star Trek V has Shatner and Nimoy in it. There's nobody likable. There's nobody likable in Prometheus except for I think Noomi Rapace is. Yeah, I think she's fine. But again, and then you see her and just totally exploited and wasted and like a slave or a bondage girl in a slasher movie in the second one. You're like, I can't believe, he just experimented on her? Like, well, this is just the worst movie. Like, I just think it's the most tasteless movie. And then soon after we learned that he experimented on her and treated her like basically a sex slave, then we got Billy Crudup going, what? is there something in this egg?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then topped off with the Jussie Smollett scene. I can't stress it enough.
Well-
Like, these movies are terrible.
Maybe there's an underlying message of, Bishop was nice, right?
Yeah.
And then Winona Ryder I don't count, right?
Yeah, what's her deal? She thinks for herself.
Yeah, but then the droids continually get more and more evil, more and more like humans, and then you have David,
but
who
Ash
goes
starts
off the
off.
rails.
Ash starts off at least. The thing that's consistent about Ash is he's a company droid, right? So he's just doing the bidding of the company. Well, do we want to talk about Romulus? So we've. Oh wait, have we gone around the room, Dave? What's the worst? Why did you
Resurrection?
And I've already hated on the film.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then Alien Covenant's second worst. Yeah.
Yeah, for a while I thought Covenant was the worst, but watching them in succession, at least Covenant looks good. Like, it's a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah.
All the shots, both Covenant and that's a thing though. And I mentioned this. So Romulus is like Romulus is like Force Awakens. Prometheus and Covenant are like Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. They're big, good-looking, pretentious, boring movies with dumb stories, and they're really, really bad. And Romulus is like Force Awakens. It looks and feels more like what we're used to and what we want, but it's just as empty and just as much of a rehash. Agreed? So Romulus is a good-looking movie. That I liked the scene with the blood, them getting around the workaround of letting the gravity turn off and letting the blood float. That was a cool scene. But the whole movie is predicated on millennial / Gen Z know-it-alls who shouldn't. Kaylee Spaney, she just seemed like a little girl. She's 26 years old. Sigourney Weaver was 21 when she did Alien. She's 21. So now you got 26.
And she was a badass.
And she's a leader. My son, he pointed out the Eileen Wu, the whatever her character's name, she should have been the hero. If you're going to go for diversity, go for diversity. She seemed like a capable pilot techie. Like, yeah, why not make her the hero? I could
She was
buy
like the first one to die.
Yeah. And I think and my son said it, and I said, yeah.
Spoilers, by the way, spoilers.
Yeah, sorry, folks. She was much better, and she was much more formidable. I would have believed her in the sort of stand-in for Ripley. But no,
she's more of a Ripley type.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed cool. I believed that she'd be this young techie. She had the intelligence in her. Kaylee Spaney, she just looks like a little kid. She could play high schoolers well into her 30s, I'm sure. She's 26 now. She looks like a high schooler. And then the two screaming British boys, like, oh my God, just shave their heads and they look like they could have been on Fury 18 or whatever. You bloody wanker! What fuck is this? I will say David Johnson as the droid was good, especially after Michael Fassbender. I liked him.
Yeah, he was really good.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was the you're not supposed to, I guess. Realize he was the droid at first. I didn't. But I thought he was really good.
He did a great job. He made his mark, and I like the transition between loyal and disloyal, working for the company and then going back to being loyal. I thought that was a fairly interesting arc.
Well, and you contrast that with David Fassbender.
Michael
Fassbender. He was just going off the rails. Like, he wasn't following the company protocol.
No.
He was just.
Well, he was like Gino said, the serial killer.
Yeah.
And it didn't. It didn't seem like Ash. Okay, Ash is a jerk, right? The very first droid, he's the worst, but he is doing the company's bidding. He's just a cold-hearted company droid, which is like, okay, that works. Michael Fassbender, how they turn him into what he is by an Alien Covenant, like, okay, he's just boring. He's irritating. He's an irritating character, I think. All right, let's get into performance. Have we covered the range? Any last words on?
Well, on Romulus, it was. I was also comparing it to Red Dawn from back in the '80s. I'm like, and I wanted him to say Wolverines. because it was like, oh, it's these kids, battling some unbeatable foe.
This is going off the rails, but Red Dawn's a good movie.
Well, I didn't say it wasn't. It just reminded me of it.
Yeah,
Just
but this
element of kids.
But
fighting,
Red Dawn has an element of like Aliens, where they survive because they have to, like kids in war-torn countries.
Well, but it wasn't kids.
But Alien Romulus starts off with, oh, hey, let's just launch from this. Again, a very J.J. Abrams-esque, let's just launch from our planet. And, no security protocols.
Right, where'd you get the ship?
Nobody chases them. Nobody says, hey, get back and do your job, you jerks. It's like, it just has that, or that J.J. Abrams Star Trek
and then one other question on that Romulus one. What I thought I noticed, I could have been wrong, was when she was kind of chasing the offspring or whatever down in the ship, and she was following his footprints. It looked like the footprints were getting bigger with every step.
Well, that's probably true.
Is that really what I was seeing, or was that?
Because that's what aliens do, though, right?
I mean, they do grow fast, but that is fast.
But again, that's all a prequel. Plus, they took the idea already from Alien Resurrection. So I was just nothing but irritated by that point. Like, okay, this movie isn't breaking any new ground. It's content to just feed fans what they've already seen before. Irritating.
It's like the same. I wrote the same but different is what I wrote.
Yeah.
Same but different. So.
Last thoughts on thematics and quality before we jump into technical specs and acting?
I think, so for my bottom couple, I put Covenant in last place.
Yeah.
And I think that, for me, like, Prometheus was boring in certain ways. I really wanted to like it. I love world building stuff and the big questions and the idea of other alien races. In this world or this universe where there are aliens and other people, I would love to see some of them. I think that's a really cool idea to explore, but I just didn't think it was done very well at all, which is more disappointing than something that I already have low expectations for.
Right.
And I felt like Covenant, like, the end of Prometheus set up certain promises for viewers, which is like, okay, it's me and David now. We're going to go, and we're going to go find this world where they all are, and we're going to get the answers that we really want.
Right.
And then it just goes, you thought that was what it was? Well, here's a turn to the face. That's what you get instead.
No, for sure.
And it's like, that to me, I mean, I know that Resurrection is by no means a good movie, but at least I can kind of mentally separate that as like, okay, this is almost like fan fiction at this point.
Right.
It's like, it's so far distant, removed in the future. Weyland-Yutani doesn't even exist anymore. It's like, okay, this is just ridiculous, schlocky nonsense. But with the Prometheus and Covenant, it felt like a real slap in the face. Like, it was just so, in my opinion, just horribly done that to me, I'm like, this is something I really should have loved, and I didn't even end up liking. And to me, that was much more disappointing than a movie about them somehow cloning Ripley and this totally absurd science of, like, we cloned her. From what? She went to an incinerator.
Yeah.
Like,
blood samples. Blood samples on Fury. Yeah. Yeah.
But, I mean, blood samples with the Queen?
Yeah.
Like, I just don't buy it.
No.
I feel like it's ridiculous and stupid. But it's because it's so ridiculous that I'm like, okay, I'm willing to separate that a little bit.
But it's just so irritatingly over the top. That's what I hate about it. Do you know this? Around that time after Alien Resurrection's just horrid flop, actually it made money overseas because it was a French director, but Ridley Scott and James Cameron were going to get together for an Alien 5. And Fox said, no, we're going to make Alien vs. Predator. So Cameron was going to write and produce, and Ridley Scott was going to direct. And they were like, nah, sounds a little pricey. We're going for AVP.
I mean, after the first two,
yeah,
the rest kind of just slide off.
Alien
slightly.
3 I think is aged well though as the conclusion to Ripley's trilogy. I think, well, okay, at least it's different. It's got its own mood, it's got its own vibe, and it still feels like it's in the universe. You know, whereas after Resurrection, okay, now you're just making Superman 4 or RoboCop 3. You're just making movies because you want to make money, and you threw the wrong director in, and it's just a piece of crap, and it's like a smorgasbord of terrible. And then you got Prometheus and Covenant, and then you got, don't forget, you also have AVP in there, is horrible, disgusting cash grabs. Then you get Ridley Scott back, and he doesn't know what he's doing. But then Resurrection. Okay, so, all right, let's go around the room. So, best Sigourney, this is kind of a no-brainer, but best Sigourney Weaver performance. Joe Field.
I really liked her in Aliens.
Yeah, that's the one she was nominated for an Oscar. Burton Brown.
Performance-wise, well, she's kind of... I didn't really like her in Resurrection. I mean, I guess she was
she's
fine.
all over the map in
was
that. No,
she was like
handed
a
terrible
superhuman.
Yeah, that was a terrible concept, and it doesn't work. Like, is she part creature? Sometimes she seems very human, and it didn't make it. It didn't work at all. It doesn't work. Dave.
Yeah. To toss up.
Oh, sorry. You never answered.
Toss up. Yeah,
you never
toss
answered.
up between Aliens and Alien. If I had to pick one, I'd say Aliens.
Yeah, it's kind of a
Dave.
Dave.
She was great in Alien, but she's stronger in Aliens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, she's a good presence for a 21-year-old. All right, I'm obviously Aliens. Okay, best supporting player, David Johnson, in any of them.
I kind of like Bishop in Aliens.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
Joe Field.
Yeah, I think it's a...
No toss-ups.
I know, that's what I was about to say. I'm like, oh, I remember the rule. In that case, yeah, I'm probably going to go with Bishop, too.
Burton?
Well, not that I would specifically disagree with that, but just to throw another one in, I like Andy.
Oh.
Andy and Romulus.
Okay, so you have to choose one, Bert. That's my rule.
Yeah. Well, I did, Andy.
Okay, you said specifically so he's the best. Okay, I don't agree with that
Mainly
at all.
because
But
it was just
that actor definitely made a good impression.
He played that first variation, like, what is this? What's wrong with him? I thought that went really well, and then he just kicked it in when he got his.
He was
chip
very
or
good.
Whatever. When he got his emotion chip like Data.
He definitely ran away with the movie, and if they'd given Eileen Wu a chance, she would have been probably pretty awesome. The combo of those two could have been great. I can't. This is Hollywood for you. All you do is preach diversity, and when you're given the chance, you don't do it. Like, that would have been a really good combo. You got two formidable actors, and they give it to little prissy pants. Typical.
Yeah.
And Gino, yours is Michael Fassbender, right?
Yeah, I love Michael Fassbender. I gotta go with my man Michael Biehn. I love Michael Biehn. I think he's awesome in Aliens.
You just have a man crush since Terminator.
Well, I don't like him in Terminator, as you know, but no, I've never liked his performance. I think he's a spaz in Terminator, but I like him a lot in Aliens, and he's a great counterpoint to Sigourney Weaver. All right, last but not least, well, I don't know what last but not least. Well, I guess just best villain, villain in the film that's not an alien. Joe Field, go.
So, I actually thought this is one of the most interesting aspects of Alien 3. Was the build-up of Weyland-Yutani bringing people down to the planet to confiscate everything and seal them up and take them away.
Yeah.
I felt like, oddly, that was a much bigger threat than the alien itself.
Right.
And so for me, that kind of stands out as the company is dangerous. Granted, I think that some of the costuming and stuff with those guys was stupid and ridiculous, but having, the creator of Bishop, and it's just him, going down there to try and talk over things as an emotional manipulation strategy. I just love that as like a villain. Like,
But he's not he's just lying. He's not the creator.
oh, yeah, he's. I'm sure he is lying. He's probably
No, he's a droid. Remember, he gets hit in the head
yeah.
by what's his face, 85, and his ears split open. He's a robot. Did you notice that?
I noticed it, but it didn't look like there was the traditional white fluid.
No, they don't show the fluid, but his ear is like hanging. He's not bleeding. It's a little. I think they probably ran out of money or run out of time or something with that shot because it's not quite clear. But it says in the credits Bishop too, so he's not. He's just lying. He's just flat out lying.
I think still, regardless of the lie, I mean, that just kind of, I think, furthers it to me, even, is that, like, the company being the villain is really interesting. And so I liked... I don't know if that counts as a villain.
Yeah,
but,
no, they definitely sort of have a face to their villainy in Part 3. Though, Paul Reiser, what do you think, Dave?
I was going to say Paul Reiser.
Paul Reiser's pretty awesome.
He's a good villain, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he's a weasel, and when he gets taken out, it's like, yes, because he just double crosses Ripley so many times.
Yeah, he's actually a really good counterpoint to Ash, right? So you got this sort of steely cold robot killer, and then you got the weasel who tries to be your friend. Let's all sing Campfire. Let's all sing some songs. We can get, all these little dumb corporate ideas, which are so funny. Like it's like he's a great villain. Bert, thoughts?
Well, I was going to say Paul Reiser.
Yeah.
But he represents the company. So
what about Charlize Theron? Dave, you're a Prometheus fan. Charlize Theron.
I am, but she's one of my least favorite characters in that.
She's wasted too.
Yeah, she just
totally.
And how she dies, I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
She's running and the ship falls on her.
She can't run left or right. She can only run in a straight line.
Yeah, she didn't look up.
But I mean, she could have been a really great villain in that. But
no,
she just came across as mean and selfish,
but unnecessarily mean. It just seemed like she doesn't. I guess they didn't want to go the Paul Reiser route, which would have been cool. I think, like if she was all like a corporate go, let's have a team building meeting and all that, but they didn't do anything. She's just a bitch. Sorry to cuss, Bert, but she's the whole time she's like one note. She has sex with Idris Elba, but that's her only moment of humanity. She's just a jerk to everybody.
Well, and even that was meet me in my cabin in 10 minutes.
Right. It's
maybe
just showing.
She's a droid. Well,
that would have been. Honestly, when I first saw Prometheus, I thought that was the deal, that she was a droid too, and that she was just hiding it or something. But no, nothing that interesting.
That would have been cool. That would have been an interesting idea.
Yeah. Especially since she was stronger than David.
Yeah.
Because she pushes him. So I thought that she was like, oh, she must be a droid too, but nope. Anyway, it's got to go with Paul Reiser for me. Though Ian Holm's pretty dang good, except in Romulus. The posthumous Ian Holm. I thought that was stupid, actually. You Romulus fans, anyone? I thought that was stupid. I think they should have used another actor. I thought, why? That just seems like fan service of the worst order.
Well, you brought this up in Alien. I was going back and forth with him. I'm like, is he a droid or is he human? In that, for the longest time until he was he sweating white?
Yeah, she when they fight, she has that little. He gets cut and he starts dripping the white blood.
And I'm like, he's a droid. Now it all makes sense. So I thought in Romulus they made a droid looking like him, until that scene.
Until they reveal it.
Yeah.
So
because I watched Alien after I went to Romulus, so it's been a long time since I'd seen it.
Yeah, I just felt like dumb fan service that they didn't need. He could have been any droid, and it wouldn't have mattered. He did a different name, and it, fine, he's the same line, but, wouldn't it stand to reason? Lance Henriksen, because Bishop is supposed to be 20 years after Alien, so Lance Henriksen should have been the model, honestly. If they wanted to make... I mean, it would still seem like fan service, but at least not like, come on, Ian Holm's dead. It just seemed like such a tacky move anyway. Anyway, okay. This is your favorite, everybody's favorite category. Best score. Jerry Goldsmith, the great Jerry Goldsmith, the great James Horner, the great Elliot Goldenthal in number 3, which I think is a really good score. The terrible John Frizzell, the forgettable John Frizzell in Resurrection. The Mark Streitenfeld in, I'll give Romulus has a pretty decent score. I don't know who did Covenant, and I don't know who did. Benjamin Wallfish did Romulus, which I thought was essentially a remake of the Jerry Goldsmith score, the first one. So, did anybody notice any music? Bert, I've trained you to notice music. Did you notice the music in any of the films?
Not in like what I would consider a soundtrack, but it was the building of suspense elements, and then several times when I was watching the movies, I'm like, I better listen to some music because Gino's going to ask, and then there wasn't any music in that scene when I started thinking about it.
Well, the Jerry Goldsmith score was minimalized, and it's interesting. All great movies seem to have, or not all great movies, but a lot of great movies and great directors seem to take a score and then throw it away. So Jerry Goldsmith's music's barely in it, and he was mad about it. He wasn't happy about that. He wrote a bunch of music that they didn't use, which I think the movie works really well without music.
Oh, yeah. But I think, what I gathered, because I only watched them once each, but it was just they were using it as an element of, like you were saying, suspense, or building that suspense, or building a tension. If it wasn't suspense, it was tension. And that's what I thought it was used for. And I'm like, well, gee, could there have been an album of the music that Gino bought of the Aliens movie? I'm like, I can't imagine that, but I guess there could have been.
No, I have the Alien. I have most of Jerry Goldsmith's good scores. It's a pretty minimal. It has a very recognizable theme. They play it in Prometheus. They play when what's his face shows up. When Wayland shows up, they play the Alien theme. It's a recognizable theme. James Horner, strangely, he got nominated for Best Score for Aliens. I don't think it's one of his best. I think it's actually one of his weaker scores. It rips off Khachaturian's music from 2000, the music that they use in 2001. And he gets no mention of it. The opening theme is that's a classical piece of music. And it's used in 2001 for the hypersleep.
I did notice his name right at the beginning. I went, oh, James Horner, got to pay attention. And then I didn't.
I think it's definitely, and the Ripley's Rescue music is note for note the Klingon theme from Star Trek 3. I think so James Horner's interview is he shows up in England wanting, hey, I'm here to write the score, and James Cameron was like, no, I'm working on the sound, baby. Take a few weeks and just think about it. And James Horner was pissed. So I think at the last minute he had to do something. So he couldn't even see the movie. So he was mad about it. So apparently if you notice little film score trivia, the next movie Cameron did, The Abyss, Alan Silvestri does the music. James Cameron hires Horner back for Titanic after making amends because he liked his Braveheart score, but he and Cameron got in a big fight because he was pissed off. So, but the score, it just seems rushed. Like, it just sounds like every other score James Horner did. So I was always disappointed. Like, why is that nominated for an Oscar? It's all the themes are note for note from another movie. Elliot Goldenthal, great score. Then after that, I think Prometheus has good music. But anybody care? Anybody notice? Nope.
The newer movies definitely feel a little more, I don't know how to put it, like Avengers influenced.
Yeah.
Like bigger orchestra, action, huge scope kind of sounds to them. The original Alien, I feel like, was trying to be minimal, and it worked out really well for that reason. Like, the very small little notes, not overwrought orchestras, like, I feel like the score really hammers home the kind of quiet loneliness of where they are.
Yeah, Well, Jerry Goldsmith was a maestro. He definitely was. Cinematography. You gotta look at this one because these are all great cinematographers. So who gets the best cinematography award? Anyone? Bert, your favorite topic.
Well, I'm gonna have to base it on the one I liked the best, which was the first one.
Yeah. Okay.
And is that right to do? I
Yeah,
don't
I
know,
think
but-
so. Yeah, I think for sure. Adrian Biddle, he did the second one. It's a good looking movie. But I will say, James Cameron sort of he started off doing Roger Corman movies. Roger Corman's a cheapskate director, famous for doing like exploitation films. James Cameron, if you look at Terminator, James Cameron like squeezed a lot out of that movie for $4 million, and he did the same with Aliens. Aliens is only $18 million. Even in 1986, it was a medium budget. It wasn't a huge budget, and it's all like, but it looks a little cheaper than Alien. Do you agree with that, team?
Yeah, I like Alien, the shots, everything, the best.
Yeah, it's a much stronger looking film. Just look at the spaceship, the engine. Oh, you guys haven't seen the director's cut. So the director's cut, they have a scene where Newt's parents visit the engineer's ship, and it looks just so much cheaper. So it just has that more like Terminator cheaper feel to it than so yeah. So Derek,
I think part of the reason is like Aliens is, I feel like, much bigger scope
Yeah.
than Alien. And
yes.
with what they had for Alien, they were really able to pack it all in to this kind of not doing a whole lot, but doing really well with what they had. And
Yeah.
really showcasing that.
For sure. I mean, $18 million, even, like I say, in 86, 85, wasn't a ton for all that they were accomplishing, Anyway, so it was Derek Van Lint who did Alien, so he did a great job. It's a beautiful looking film. And the effects are still good. The spaceship effects look, like, again, now you see so much CG, it always looks like there's always a sun everywhere. Like, oh yeah, there's a sun. Creates this bright white or bright blue ship flying through space, and it looks like CG. But here, it's a textured model, and it's dark. It's like, yeah, here's the deal with space. You can't see. and Alien remembers that fact. Like, yeah, they have running lights. You can't see. So yeah. All right, I do like Alex Thompson's photography in Alien 3. I think it's that scene where Charles Dance performs the autopsy on Newt is really well done, I think. And I like all of the David Fincher cutaways. I think they look pretty cool throughout the movie. Any thoughts, Dave?
No, I mean, I liked Alien 3. It was a surprise,
Yeah.
And to be fair, I mean, how do you come off making a sequel to Alien and Aliens, which are so well done,
Yeah.
and still, do well.
Yeah,
So
he makes his
I
mark.
thought-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, wrapping up. Who did the best job overall? Directing, I guess you're all gonna say Ridley Scott. No, I mean the best. Actually, the best. For sure, the best directed movie, in a sense, is Alien.
And then James Cameron.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, because Alien. Let's face it, Alien. If you haven't seen it before, is way scarier than Aliens. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's more. It's much more
it
psychological.
Yeah, it builds.
Yeah. Well, it's not a better film because it's not as satisfying, I don't think. But I think
No,
the direction is better. It's like it is a very moody, creepy film. Yeah.
I think it's hard to
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think it's hard to measure them against each other because they're so different, just intrinsically. Like, yes, they're both Alien movies. Yes, one is a sequel to the other. But just genre-wise and what they're both trying to accomplish, I think they both do really well with what they were supposed to do. But if you're coming to Aliens looking for, like, a really, like, jump scare horror movie, you're going to probably be a little bit disappointed. And if you're going to Alien for this high action, shooting guns around, killing monsters kind of thing, you're going to be disappointed there too. But I think for what both of them are, I think that I mean, I think that Alien is maybe shot a little bit more a little better, or maybe a little more interestingly than Aliens, but I mean, satisfying, hard to say. Like, if I were going into a horror movie and it turned out to be an action movie, I'd probably be disappointed, and vice versa.
How do you think Fede Alvarez did with Romulus in terms of direction? Because I will say, we haven't talked enough about it. I thought the first half hour was actually pretty good. Like, I liked this. I thought the scope and direction was actually really good until it just settled into rehash and fan service. No?
I mean, it's a good movie. I know Roseanne. You said Roseanne.
I'm not going to go that far. I think it was an okay movie. I thought it was.
But, I mean, again, I'm talking the scope of the Alien series, right?
Yeah.
It's in the middle.
Right.
So.
Well, that's not good.
Okay.
We've got Alien Covenant and Resurrection, which are again, Resurrection is one of the worst I've ever seen.
Let's say it's a C+ movie.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah. B-, C+, yeah. But
Yeah.
where does that get you in the world of great cinema?
A lot of money.
No,
Well said.
Actually, I liked Romulus was my number 3.
Right.
So, and I think partly because I liked. I mean, I can be a sucker for nostalgia. I'll admit that, but like I liked some of the elements that it was borrowing from the older movies.
I
think some of those things ridiculous, absurd. Like, get away from her, you bitch. Like,
that was ridiculous. That was ridiculous.
Like, yeah, for me, I'm like, that was painful.
Yeah,
you know, those kinds of not even nods, just horrible. But there were things that I did like. I mean, I liked that it still kind of went back to the sort of moodiness of Alien and Aliens and this, ship. Granted, I think there's a lot of problems. I think a lot of the plot doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No.
Why this whole space station that's been derelict for, I don't know, a year or 2 or 3.
Ridiculous.
And is now floating close to this planet, and Weyland-Yutani hasn't discovered it
exactly. And it's loaded with face huggers.
Yeah,
and so so I would think that'd be a pretty high priority.
Yeah.
It was the laziest screenplay, and it started fairly well. Like, okay, now again, I would have liked a few more adults in the room. How about a pilot who, there could have been a lot more to make it more believable, and it was just so lazy. Like, is he choosing kids just to appeal to kids because that's what pays for tickets?
That's why.
It just felt like teens in space, and I don't know why. Yeah. Because Alien has always been about older people, even with Sigourney Weaver. It's like, she seems in command. So to get these like millennial brats or Gen Z brats, I just thought that was a cash grab. But I like the idea that they're on a Weyland-Yutani planet. Mm-hmm. Though, having lived in a town of 1,500, they said the population was 2,700. And I'm like, why is it so crowded? Your local neighborhood probably has 2,700 people. You don't see people just hover, like 2,700 people unless...
That's not that many, really.
No, even on a colony, you'd probably see a lot of people like sleeping, right? So not everybody would be out just crammed out on the streets. I thought that was kind of silly, but anyway, I just immediately objected when they just launch. Oh, see ya! We're out of here.
All the way to space.
Yeah. Anyway, all right, we've covered all that. All right, what films do you recommend, Joe Field?
First 2. I think that if you watch the first 2 and nothing else, you'll have watched all the best of Alien.
Amen. Bert, what are you going to recommend?
Limited to 2?
No, you can recommend all that. You can recommend all of them if you want.
Well, I would do 1, 2, and 3 in Romulus, but
okay. David Johnson.
I would do 1, 2, and 3 Romulus and Prometheus, however, not Alien Covenant or Alien Resurrection.
Okay. And I got 1, 2, and 3. I say the first 3 are a tidy little trilogy. All right, everybody.
All right.
Thanks for joining us. Thanks, everybody, for listening and watching. If you're out there, please like and subscribe on Facebook or Rumble or Spotify or Apple or any of that stuff. All right, talk to you next time. Bye, folks.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to Fabulous Film and Friends. Copyright 2024, a Bel Air Films production.